Hello, welcome to another amazing installment of the Future of Event Marketing. I'm Clara DeSoto. I'm part of Team Event Farm, and I'm thrilled to have here with me Liz King, who is the mastermind and everything behind Liz King Events and the fantastic Texie Talk conference here in New York. Hi, Liz.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Such a pleasure to have you indeed. So we have some questions that we'd love to ask you about, you guessed it, the future of event marketing. And we can just jump right in. So for starters, let's start from the very beginning. You started your career on the event side with higher education at Columbia University. I'm curious, what did you see in those events that led you to have such an interest in the intersection of events and technology?
Well, it's funny. I was working at Columbia doing events for them, but I was specifically in their career department. So we were doing like career fairs, networking events, really anything that educated a student on how to get a job after they left Columbia. And I would say in terms of technology, there was really not much technology used at all. Large universities like that have a lot of in-house software. And so I remember telling someone about Eventbrite and they were like, yeah, let's build that. And I was like, no, it already exists and it's free. But that's the mentality of being in an organization like that. So it actually was almost so antiquated in their own way that worked well, that it inspired me to think about all the other ways that you could be using technology. And I think, just like so many people, I just have an interest in technology, and I've always been one of those people who likes to tinker with new things. And so I was just trying all these new things and realizing they could have really great use if you could use them.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, and you're totally right. There really is sort of you can that onboarding the new technologies like that, and in particular for a large organization, can be challenging, and they really need people like you to sort of spearhead that, it seems.
Yeah, it's a big project.
Totally. I mean, technology, I guess it can be scary to some. So in your LinkedIn tagline, you say, events are the most powerful tool for creating a strong brand and community. Your digital marketing counterparts might disagree with you. I'd love to hear how you would back up that statement.
I believe that 100%. Working on my LinkedIn headline was one of those really life-changing things where you tweak it 5 million times. And at the core of things, of course, I believe in digital marketing, and I'm very active in digital marketing. I think social media is really important. I think video series like this is really important. But at the end of the day, I think there's just a connection that people have with a brand and with the community around a brand that you cannot, it's face to face, and there's nothing really that replaces that. So I'm not one of those people who believes that in 20 years, we're all going to stay at home 24/7 and do everything virtually. People really crave that in-person connection. And events, if you think about it, I remember someone told me this, and I'm sure there's like a more formal quote that I could be saying right now, but someone had once said, if you think about it, like everything major that's happened in the world has happened at an event, whether it's a conference or a meeting or a special event like weddings, and all of that really plays such a role. And I believe that that's because that's the core of where people come together. And when people are together, communities are built and brands connect with those communities. So I really believe in that statement.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that there's something. It's that intersection between creating those bridges from online and offline that I think where the magic happens. To your point, back to your Columbia days. During that time, social media was also pulled under your events domain. How do you see those channels working together in the next few years?
I think that people do communicate through social media and other technology platforms. Even email is somewhat outdated, I think, at this point. And so, leveraging platforms like social media is really important. So when it comes to hosting an event, you have to market it. When it comes to marketing, you have to use social media. So to me, it's so integrated. And when I was at Columbia, I was kind of just like the only person who knew what Twitter was early in the beginning, or a very small group of us. And it just made sense. If someone was going to do it, it had to be the person who was going to be trying to get people to our events. And so there was a connection there. I think that's a connection I don't see going away. Marketing has become like very digital. and
Yeah.
and events obviously rely very heavily on marketing. So those are two things that are just going to be married forever, I think.
Yeah, I think that that's entirely true. Now, you're currently serving as an adjunct faculty member at NYU, correct?
Yes.
That's awesome.
Exciting.
And as part of that, you're teaching students about these new technologies for the meeting and conference industry. I'd love to hear your thoughts on which technologies you think teach, or that you're currently teaching, are the most important and relevant right now, and which of those you feel like have staying power.
There's, I mean, obviously so much technology out there, and especially for the events industry. I would say, I'm teaching, I would say in terms of relevancy, I think that the students find that, apps and gadgets that make their lives easier are the things they're most excited about and most relevant to them. So even little things like Google Hangouts and Dropbox and travel apps, that makes our lives, it allows us to do what we do better and faster. And so I think that those are very relevant. Of course, we're talking to them about registration apps and mobile apps and things like that. But I think some of the new things that we're talking about are data, and how can we really collect that? How do we analyze that? How do you make sense of all of that data? How do you use it to do things and make decisions for your future? Of course, wearable technology is something. I think out of all of that stuff, though, data, if I had to tell people to focus on one thing, I would say data. I think there's a lot of really cool activations that companies like Event Farm allow you to do. And at the core of that is that data. And if you can't turn that around and make smart decisions with it, you have access to all of this that really is useless to you.
Yeah, no, that's such a powerful statement, and a big part of, to your point, what we work on here at Event Farm. I guess it is interesting that, that the apps and, the little things that make our lives easier obviously are the easiest things to integrate into our lives in the first place. So, I think that that's probably where the biggest challenge arises in these event technology components. That how do we make them as easy as, oh, I just install an app. But you're right that for sure the power of data. Speaking of which, what technologies do you think you will be, teaching to your students in about 2 years from now? I'm going to ask you for a little fortune telling now.
I think that we are going to see a lot more happening with wearables. I think it's similar to what we were just talking about. The apps that you can download and use every single day have become core to our lives. And now we want to take it to the next level, which is that we don't want to look at the app necessarily. We want to be able to engage with these technologies without necessarily thinking about it. So, is Apple Watch going to be the thing? I don't know. I know that I feel like it hasn't had as much success as they have wanted it to. And obviously they're very early in that world. And obviously there are a lot of other wearable devices out there. But from RFID and just, I think all different kinds of wearable technology, we're going to be talking about a lot in the future. I don't think it's going anywhere.
Yeah, I think that, like, would you say that that how people are engaging with wearables at events are, really kind of laying that groundwork towards of like experiencing just how useful then a wearable could be in the rest of their lives, because they're really kind of drawing that connection there?
Absolutely. It's a great case study. You can come in, experience it for a day. It's a very curated experience. I mean, if you take Google Glass, I think that's one of the reasons why it was very hard for it to really take off in the beginning. You would go out and everyone's looking at you like you're a crazy person, and there really wasn't a lot for you to engage with, and it wasn't fun. And so an event where there's a concentrated group of people trying something new, it actually works better because there's more people using it. And I think it's a great inspiration. You get to go out and say like, okay, this could be also used in other ways.
Yeah, as opposed to the tech equivalent of a kick me sign.
Exactly. Exactly.
Did you see that the new wearable that just came out, that it's like a luxury watch brand that's trying to get into like the smartwatch space? So they literally just put an Apple Watch on the other side of the watch.
Yeah, I don't get it, but
yeah,
I saw that.
So funny. Cool. So just switching gears here for a second, I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about, experiential marketing. So beyond, doing cool things, how would you say marketers are using these experiences to achieve their, greater business objectives? How do they know if they've been successful?
I think regardless of what generation we're talking about and what age bracket, I think that people through the use of technology have become a lot more touchy-feely. They want to experience things. And I don't mean necessarily emotional from, sad and happy, but they want to physically touch things. They want to have experiences. I'm reading articles all the time about, investing your money in experiences and not in things. And I think that people very much are living that life. I think that's a great thing about how people are experiencing life right now, is that you actually can, pay for a vacation instead of a physical thing. So anyway, I think when it comes to marketing, it's just a smart way to make that connection. Again, social is great. Digital is great. You can build a really large audience online, but then at some point, I think it's really important to bring them in person and give them an experience. So I think brands are leveraging experiential marketing and really trying to think of different ways to give people a physical experience, to give them an emotional experience. I mean, every brand, I feel like at this point, is doing some kind of really cool campaign that they then record and draws on your heartstrings, and then it goes viral on social. So, it's piecing together those digital components with that in person. I think it just makes a lot of sense.
Totally. I think that, the whole shift in spending from stuff to experiences is huge, and is clear in so many industries. But I think that you bring up a great point, which is that, yeah, sure, like in digital, you can amass those audiences, but you're competing for attention in like the most competitive landscape. Whereas to your point, in experiential, you really are getting that full attention, which, it's hard to come by otherwise.
And if you're trying to make an impact on social, the best thing to do is to inspire your audience.
Yeah.
If they have a great experience, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to tweet about it, Facebook, make those videos go viral. So, there is a lot of interplay between those two worlds.
That's a great point. Yeah. People want to share things. So it's just a question of giving them the things to share.
Exactly.
Cool. So I know we touched on this earlier, but, but data, you mentioned its vast importance, and I couldn't agree more. How would you say it's changing the way marketers view events?
I think that people want to see where their money's going. I mean, ever since the economy has been tighter, people then need to look at their budgets and really figure out where they're spending money. And I think that there is a pull in internal organizations between digital and in-person events, and where are we spending the majority of our money. And I think that people are still really trying to figure out, I mean, I feel like you and I are talking like this makes perfect sense that these two things work together, but not everyone is necessarily there. So I think, people are trying to like shift their budgets to digital online marketing and cutting back on their in-person stuff. And so when you do an in-person event, they want to know, like, was it really worth it? And how do you tell that ROI? And I think social, to some extent, has helped us to understand that you can measure things. You have a Twitter account, you have a certain number of followers, you get to see how many retweets you have, and then you start thinking, like, how can I do that for my in-person event? So I think it's just a matter of, I think that it's just really important. And so people have started to figure out that they want to test the return on their investments. And so data is a key component to that. I mean, obviously there's the feel good. Yeah, I think it was great, but people want hard numbers.
Totally. That's a great point, that, the like granularity of the measurement in digital and in social has really set the stage for that kind of expectation in all marketing efforts. And that, yeah, that's a great point. Cool. So I'm curious, obviously there will be a lot that comes out in the next few years that is, shiny and new, and event in the event industry. That's, at the end of the day, a big part of what we do in this industry is create wow. But what criteria do you use to determine what actually matters and what is just shiny and noise, if noise can be shiny?
In our world, it can be. I would say, I think, first of all, it's important to mention that I think you should really just try anything. And I think you really don't get a sense for what's going to stay unless you've tried a million things that didn't stay, and then you start to learn why they didn't stay. So, I think it's really important to kind of be out there and make sure that you're always challenging what you're currently doing and trying things with the knowledge that you're going to fail at probably 90% of them. We're always trying things at Techsy Talk Live that I'm like, I don't know, it could be horrible, but at least we could say we did it. But in terms of like how I tell that things are going to stay or not, I think one major component is how easily it integrates into people's lives. We have enough going on. And if it's really hard for people to download the app, or it's really hard for people to figure out what to do with that bracelet that they just got, or whatever it might be, I don't think it's going to stay very long. Another thing is user adoption. So things like Google Glass, if there are only 5 people around you who have it, how much fun is that? So I don't think it's going to stick around as well. And then of course, I feel like I always see like really great products, and behind them, they just don't have any marketing teams. They don't have the money invested in really getting it out there. And I think that's unfortunate, but those companies I can often see not making it in the long run, because at the same time as the technology is really important and it's really great that you come up with something that works, it really matters that you get it out for those first 2 reasons. So it's not enough to just create something that's really powerful. You have to be able to get it out there, and you have to have the funding and the team behind you to really make that a reality.
And the events.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a great point. I always wonder, have you ever come across that company that tried to make a microphone in a beach ball?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like that's look, it's kind of like the event technology equivalent to Project Loon. It's like just crazy enough that it might work. Have you ever like used it or seen it in action?
I haven't. And it's another one of those that came out and I thought, wow, that's really cool. I wonder how it works. And then I don't really hear enough about it.
Yeah.
Not that it has not disappeared. I don't know that it's disappeared, but it's just, it hasn't picked up enough.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, marketing, so important. So next question is about, your incredible company, Liz King Events. Now, you've clearly produced many conferences at the helm of this company over the last 6 years. How do you think that the conversation with your clients has changed during that time? What have they, become? What have you seen them become the most curious about?
That's a really good question. I still sometimes meet clients, and I feel like there is a 3-year kind of process for clients when we first start working with them. Even today, like if I got a new client today, I feel like we're starting at year 1 with them, and we kind of tell them like, these are all the amazing things you could do. And in year 1, they basically say, we don't have the budget. Doesn't sound interesting. I don't think we need that. And then in year 2, they'll kind of say like, okay, maybe we can try 1 or 2 things, but can you get it for us for free? And then by year 3, they're finally willing to pay for a technology that we are using. And of course, this is like an annual conference model that I'm kind of playing off of, but that's a lot of our type of clients, are big conferences or big meetings. And obviously they're similar to Columbia, where they have to, when they implement it, they have to do it really well. And some small brands like me, we can kind of be like really crazy and try new things, but not every company has that luxury. So, I get it, but I think that, so one thing is, I think no matter how many years we've been in business, we're still always coming across companies who just totally don't get it at all and have no understanding of how technology and events work together. They're really great at hosting events. They probably use technology in many other areas of their business, but they just really haven't thought about those 2 things together. But, I feel like we're still, with smaller brands, we're still talking about things like, you don't have to use paper for your registration. And there are really easy check-in apps that are free. I think bigger brands who have kind of evolved past that are starting to think about the experiential stuff and really trying to figure out like, how can they merge that with great digital campaigns. And I think they're creating really smart event series or event campaigns that then have very strong digital ties. And I think it's this very much experiential marketing thing that we're talking about. But I'm seeing a lot of more clients coming to us with this, okay, we want to do 1 thing for every month over the next year. And it's these smaller things that build up to this larger thing. And these are the digital tie-ins. So we are seeing companies be more strategic, not only about when and how many events and what kind of events they host, but then what is the digital tie for all of those.
Totally. But, it's interesting that you point out that regardless, like, despite the length that you have been producing these events, the life cycle of each client is always sort of the same, and that you have to kind of run that beta test, whet the appetite the 2nd year, and by the 3rd year, then they're willing to really, but it takes time, with any new technology, it's, there's that like rather lengthy onboarding process, I guess.
Yeah, I think like people like us and people who are very tech savvy, we feel like some of these conversations that we're having are so 2007 or so 2008. And
Yeah.
it's really 2017 for some people. Like they're just not there. And that makes sense. And that's how, it has to be for it to kind of take over. But, it's funny sometimes that I will sit with people like you and have like great dinners and we'll just chat about like ridiculous things. And then my very next meeting, I'm like, okay, so you still use Excel for printed Excels for registration. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
So I think there's just such a disparity between where we could be, but we have to remember where we are. And that's really important, is that there's a million possibilities right now. But to your earlier question about staying power, there's only certain things that are really sticking.
Yeah.
And we have to kind of like be able to distill that for our clients and know that these things work and we can get them to try these things and do this. And then that other stuff is possible, but not necessarily for them right now.
Totally. And I think that, one of the most interesting parts about working in the events industry is that you really get to know how people behave and how they interact with new. So that arguably, is there's such valuable learnings within technology. Is, understanding how people are engaging with and interacting with, and when they're introduced to something new. So it'll be interesting to see. Who knows? Maybe you'll come up with the next big tech product, because if anybody knows how people interact with one another and with new things, it's you, and it's people like you. So that's really interesting, and it's bridging that, I guess, digital divide, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Now switching gears a little bit, Double Dutch, they produce mobile event apps. What are some ways that your customers have used event apps in forward-thinking ways?
I think that there are some very basic things that people, I guess, like the agenda, speaker list, exhibitor list, things like that. But beyond that, I don't know how much really innovative stuff is being done in the mobile apps for events specifically. And the reason is because they're such short use. You download them like one day and then the next day they're gone. And, so to the earlier point, it's very hard to get people to be comfortable using them, and also really hard to engage people past an event because they've already turned off and gone back to Facebook that they use 15 times a day. So I don't know how much innovation there really is in terms of, the long-term use of mobile apps. So when it comes to the single day use, I've seen some people do some really cool things with gamification and engaging people on site in an event. But I think that there is some limitation to a mobile app specifically for events. It serves a great purpose. We're not printing massive programs anymore. And, it has evolved the industry and they still play a very important role. But just in terms of the long term, I think, I feel like I used to read a lot of articles about like, how do you keep the 365 community in the app? I just don't think that's realistic. I think that people want to go back to social media, and that's the smart thing, is to have your social campaign lead into your app, which leads into your online community, which totally. I think you've got to do your year-round community, but not necessarily through your app.
Yeah, be where the people are versus expecting them to go somewhere new.
Yeah, they're not going to download another app and start using it 20 times a day when it's only relevant one day a year.
Yeah, Candy Crush just takes up way too much space.
Exactly.
This has been really wonderful. I am so grateful that you took the time to participate in this. Those are all the questions I have, but this has been really great. Thank you.
Of course, thank you.
Of course, and we'll see you soon at Techsy Talk. Once again, this has been another installment of the Future of Event Marketing, and a big thanks to Liz King for participating, and we will see you soon.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Bye.